Hi all, and welcome back to our channel, In Trouble with True Crime Sisters. This time my sister has taken on quite the case, and the reason it's a bit different for us is there's so much information out there, so many different versions of the event, that it's a little bit difficult to see what is true and what is false. So we've tried to stick to the facts and hope we managed. Today we're talking about Richard Trenton Chase, aka the Vampire of Sacramento. Richard was born on 23rd of May in 1950. It is said that he had a fairly normal childhood, considered it was in the 1950s. The parents would fight and there might have been some abuse from his father, but it's not as bad as it could have been. Nothing to suggest he would end up the way he did. As a child, he would also kill cats and other small animals, and it's said that he started using drugs like marijuana, LSD at an early age, but no one at school noticed anything weird or strange about him. He acted like a normal kid and teenager and dressed like a normal kid, but he noticed that he was not like a normal kid. He was unable to get an erection. He thought there was growing bones out of his skull. He had stomach pains and thought his stomach was upside down. He moved in with some friends because he thought his mother was trying to poison him, but they didn't live with him for very long. He was always high on marijuana or LSD, or he was just drunk. He would walk around naked all the time, so they moved out when he refused to leave. As soon as he had a place for himself, he would take home his kills and drink their blood, sometimes mix it with Coca-Cola. He thought that he did not have enough blood in his body. And this is where all the issues came from, like not getting an erection, having a heart too small, of course. This was all in his head. His solution to this was getting more blood in his body, and he did this by drinking blood. It was in 1976 when he injected rabbit blood into his veins and ended up being committed to a mental institute. He had been committed once before in 1973, but it was in the 1976 he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The staff gave him the nickname Dracula, as he would trap birds and break their necks and then drink their blood. He's even said to have stolen syringes to extract blood from the therapy dogs. Now, I'm not sure how true it is, but later in 1976, he was released as they didn't see him as a threat to the public. He had gotten his diagnosis and he was on the right medication. However, he was released into his mother's care. His parent was at this point separated, not living together. For some reason, she slowly got him off his meds, then got him an apartment where he moved in. So his own mother got him off the meds the doctor had described for her, blood asphyxiated son. I myself think she was a bit insane herself. She thought that it was a good idea. It was also very irresponsible. There was an incident in August at Pyramid Lake, Nevada, 1977. Pyramid Lake was a part of the Indian reservation. At the Bureau of Indian Affairs found a pickup truck, and inside it was covered in blood stains, and there was a bucket of some kind of organ. They saw there was a naked person sitting on a rock covered in blood, and it turns out to be Richard. He was arrested, but after investigation they found out that the organs in the bucket was a cow liver, and they let him go with no charges. In December of 1977 he killed his first human. Ambrose Griffin was outside of his house in the driveway when Richard drove by and shot him with his .22 caliber handgun. Griffin was 51 years old and the father of 2 kids. When the police started investigating, they didn't find any reason why anyone would harm Griffin and thought maybe it was an accident, perhaps some kid driving by shooting out on a street light or something similar, as there was no evidence left except some .22 handgun bullet casing, but no other leads to go on. Just a short 2 weeks later, he tried to enter the home of a woman, but it was locked. He left the house. He later told the police that if the doors were open, he was allowed to enter, like an invitation. If it was locked, he was not welcome and could not enter. Side note, do we think he misunderstood the whole vampire thing when you're invited in and all that? Or was I the only one who picked up on that? Anyway, let's get back to the story. He was once chased by a couple when he was going through their stuff. He did manage to urinate and defecate on the baby's clothes and bed before being chased away. It was on the 23rd of January that he committed his second murder. He entered the home of Theresa Wallen. There was garbage scattered around the entryway of the house, and her body had been dragged into the bedroom where she died. He killed a 3-month pregnant woman, raped her corpse while stabbing her with a butcher knife. He also removed some of her organs and the nipples before drinking her blood in a used yogurt cup. Her clothes were pulled up on her upper body and her legs were spread apart. He had made a cut on her stomach. You could see that he had moved around her organs. Then the really mentally unstable Richard then walked out into her garden, picked up some of the dog poop and forced it down her throat before leaving. Just a short 3 days later, he entered the home of another woman, 38-year-old Evelyn Murray. But she was not home alone. She had 3 other people in the house at the same time. Her friend Denny Meredith, her 6-year-old son Jason, and her nephew David Fear. He killed Danny first with his .22 caliber handgun. They think he was killed as soon as Richard entered the house. Then Evelyn and her son. Her son was found on the bed next to his mother, shot in the head. The officer then found a bathtub with bloody water. They did not find the body of the 22-month-old David and thought maybe he had been kidnapped. But before he ran away, he raped the corpse of Evelyn and ate some of her body parts. When someone came knocking on the door, they scared Richard and he took David and fled away in Danny's car. He was arrested not long after. The same day as he murdered Teresa, someone had spotted a man outside of her house with long hair and shabby clothes. A woman had met a man with similar features that day at a parking lot. He had just come up to her and started talking to her. He had then just asked if she had remembered him, and they went to high school together. He had given her his name, and she had called it in. They then get a name and an address. When they came to his apartment, there was no one there, but they had heard that there was someone inside of an empty apartment next door, while the police were waiting for instructions on what to do next. As they did not have a warrant to go into the apartment, Richard thought they had left. He then left the apartment with boxes. He then saw the police and started running. They caught up with him and then made the arrest. In the apartment, the police said that the apartment was covered in blood. The floor and walls and ceilings. The kitchen was full of blood. The sink was full and there was blender with blood and something in it. There was blood everywhere, but no David. Richard denied killing people. He admitted to killing animals and dogs, but no humans. He had also denied knowing anything about David. It was a few months later, in March, that a decomposed body was found in a box in between 2 buildings. A caretaker of a church had found a box in between 2 buildings, and it was identified to be David Fiera. Richard had decapitated the body before leaving it there. He had decapitated the body because he was trying to get out more blood. In 1979, Chase finally stood trial for his crime, 6 counts of first-degree murder. Richard's defense was trying to get down the charge to second-degree murder, as this did not mean the death penalty. They meant that because of his mental illness. He was not sane at the time of the murders, and the murders were not premeditated. They were not planned. They were murders of opportunity. He did not try to get away with it. In a way, I believe this. People who had seen him around said that he was wearing the same jacket as the murderer of Teresa was wearing, and he was covered in blood a lot of the time. But do I believe that he does not deserve the death penalty? I don't know. This is not for me to decide. However, on the 8th of May, he was found guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to die in the gas chamber. But in 1980, just a few days after Christmas Eve, he was found dead in his cell. He had saved up his medication and killed himself. Now you might be thinking, this sounds kind of familiar. Well, he was the inspiration of several movies and episodes, like season 1 of Criminal Minds, where a little boy was kidnapped and the blood had been drained from victims. It is later discovered that the unsub was mentally ill and drinking the blood of the victims. Now I hope you are as sickened by this case as I am. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye!